Thought I would show some of the work that I've been doing on the engine and transmission. First off, I've got to get this in the car, and I'm going to pull it from the bottom up. So I've got the modifications to the engine cradle, so that's ready to be bolted back in. I didn't have to do much to it. Basically, there was a plate across here that I just trimmed out so I can get up into the header bolts a little bit easier. Nothing major. Outside of that, it's the same as it was. So I'll eventually get this powder coated before I actually mount the engine permanently. But for now, that's done. And to get the engine up in, like I say, I'm going to pull it from the top down, or from the bottom up. And it's just like I took it out, but this time, instead of doing it, the last one I wrapped wooden blocks down here and put a chain around it and brought it up that way, but I actually broke one of the valve covers. So I've got a valve cover for it, and I made an engine lift plate. Not pretty. I could have bought one for $90 online, but I decided I had the parts and the tools, so why not? It took me about 6 or 7 hours to build and get the drilling right, and it's not pretty, but it's functional, and at least I used up some stuff that I had. So this chain setup allows me to change the balance, because if you're lifting just the engine, you'll want to go more to the front, and if you're got the transmission on it, you want to go more to the back. So that's what that setup is for. And then the transmission, the new Tremec Magnum 11012 Magnum. So that's more of a Chevy transmission. And then for the back, I've got to make the shifter. It came with another shifter that brings it back about here. So it's a shifter extension. So I'm going to try to bring that back. If not, I can always go back to what Tom had. That was a pretty nice setup that he made, but just trying to make it a little more. I was having some issues trying to get it adjusted, I guess is where it comes down to, where this is a lot easier to make it work. It just might be a little longer shift throw. So that's where I'm not sure. Got the bell housing. So this is 6.5 inches deep from end to end. I did take off a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch spacer plate that was on the old one because the transmission's slightly different. So when I got this all done, I've got a little bit of extension basically to the back of the bronze bushing that's in there. But I do have a new pilot bearing that they sent. So this pilot bearing has the same bronze bushing, and then the extension comes back towards the input shaft a little bit. So that should work out really good. Where the other one sat in further. So to get all this measured out, what I needed to do was get the transmission set up at the same angle. So I have a 6.5 inch gap. And I bought this cart, Harbor Freight, that you can jack it up, let it down, whatever you need to do for different heights. And then I just use wooden blocks to get it perfectly square to the engine. So it's not off center at all. And I was trying to come up with a way to make it so you can repeat it. And what I did, I just made sure that the wheels butted up against the metal cart that I got under the engine. And I had to make a little stand for the engine so that sat on there. And I used a jack to change the angle, the squareness of the engine to the transmission. So a little bit Rube Goldberg, but it's working. And it's only temporary till I get it connected together. So the next step is on the bell housing. I don't need these bottom two ports, and I want to keep the water out of the clutch. So what I'm going to do is weld these over, and I was debating on powder coating this. I don't know. The cradle is going to be out for powder coat, but this looks like it was originally done with powder coat. So I know they don't like to do it. They have to burn it off to get it off there. So I'll probably just repaint the bell housing. Nobody ever sees it anyway. And the other thing I need to do is I had a hard time getting the bell housing off the transmission. Tighten so the bolts up to actually push against the transmission and pop the bell housing loose, because I had a heck of a time trying to pound it off. So I had two more through holes, or I actually threaded holes, so that I can put a couple more bolts in from the outside and push the transmission off if I have an issue next time that pulls. I don't plan on pulling that again for years, but Murphy's Law says I will, so you never know. So that's my status. Just a matter of getting these two connected, putting it under the car, and then I'll have to make a new transmission mount probably, because this transmission's a little bit longer and the mounts are going to be a little bit different spaced. I do have a new yoke. So this has a different number of splines in the back, so I had to get a new yoke for this. Probably have to get the drive shaft length changed. When you're working on cars, it's amazing how many stupid things you can run into. These are the motor mounts, and you can see the part numbers that are stamped on there. They look almost identical, but I found that there is a difference. If you look at them in line, this one has a wing sticking out on it that this one doesn't. And yes, the air conditioner hits that wing and won't let you put the mount in. And then this one has a tab sticking out on it, where this one doesn't. And yet the motor mounts have the same part numbers on them. Go figure. I also found that if you try to put them in upside down, it creates a bit of havoc trying to get the engine cradle back up in place, because you can't figure out why the cradle won't get high enough when really it's because you put it in that way. And do you think I had pictures when I took it apart? No. I've taken so many videos and camera photos. You think you have everything covered more than once, and you run into stupid things like not recording where the engine mounts, what orientation they went back or came from originally. So this is about an hour and a half, 2 hours in that I've finally figured out what my engine mount problems are. Upside down, left is right, right's left. But that's the fun of working on cars. But one of the worries I had was how to balance the engine and transmission as I put them into the car. I have two carts, but that's a pain trying to work with two separate carts to roll around and jack one up while the engine's on the hoist. So I was able, with the engine lift plate, to find a balance point. And there you go. So looks like it's going to go up nice and straight. So now I have to put it all back under the car and move the lift back. But at least now it's pretty balanced, and I can easily get it up in place, start bolting the engine cradle in and so forth, and keep progressing.